Mr. Odo, you're not going to take the law into your own hands. Watch me.
Hey, it's ODO'S, and welcome back to another episode of Treknalysis. A murder mystery on the station, the O'Briens are making a scene at Quark's, Julian's desperately trying to get a date with Dax, and Jake and Nog get into some teenage hijinks. This is the DS9 episode, A Man Alone. Now, I previously covered an Odo investigation episode on Treknalysis with the episode Necessary Evil, which has a nice noir feel to it. However, A Man Alone is the first Odo investigation episode, and while it doesn't quite have that noir feel that Necessary Evil has, it serves as a nice character building episode. But is Odo as alone as the episode title states? Hardly. Despite the episode being called A Man Alone, it does a lot to set up some of the other characters in the show, which helps break the episode up from being too much of a crime drama. And it's a pretty good early episode, which is why I'm talking about it. Look, I can't be expected to cover bad episodes every Treknalysis. Constable Odo is a man accused of a crime he didn't commit, as he sets out to prove his innocence in A Man Alone.
I am temporarily relieving you of duty.
Next time on Star Trek Deep Space Nine.
But before I go further, make sure you subscribe to my channel. I talk a lot about Star Trek, video games, and whatever else I feel like talking about. And if you'd like to help support the channel, consider becoming a member. Be great to have you aboard. We opened the episode with Dr. Julian Bashir walking into Jadzia Dax's Holosuite time.
Breaking into a holosuite during someone's program is not only rude, it's illegal.
The first crime of the episode, ladies and gents! Yeah, not exactly practicing what you preach there, eh, Julian? Jadzia, of course, deduces that it's Julian sneaking up behind her. The one person who's been trying to get a date with her ever since she first walked onto the station.
How did you know it was me?
There are different ways to recognize someone. The rhythm of their steps, for example.
Those sounds could be imitated.
I'd know the difference.
Yeah, you're not exactly breaking new ground there, Jadzia. Try growing up with a couple of siblings. You pick up on stuff like that if you live with someone long enough. But Julian, being impressed with basic common instincts, hits on Jadzia while trying out her weird bubble brain teaser.
Cold hands, warm heart.
Concentrate on the sphere.
What is that exotic scent you're wearing?
Focus.
Suffice to say, Julian wasn't exactly popular when the show first started. He just rubs people the wrong way. No, not like that! To be honest though, even in the early show, I don't hate him. Granted, I like a nice British accent, and sure, it's a little tough to watch him make continual plays for Jadzia and fail miserably. But I'm not creeped out by him the way I was creeped out by Lloyd Braun. Okay, Devanani Rao. Of course, Julian didn't try to run his dirty little fingers through Dax's hair. Yeah, Julian's already 5 steps above Rao. Well, Julian's busy mind ultimately fails in both the puzzle and asking Jadzia out because she already made plans with Cisco.
Computer. Reset.
Wow, that was a weird teaser that has absolutely nothing to do with the main plot. Meanwhile, at Quark's, the place is jumping, Odo and Quark banter,
Business is good, Quark. You're almost making an honest living.
and Keiko O'Brien is making a scene.
That's not true. What? You decided it out.
Scenes from the O'Brien marriage, ladies and gents! Heck, according to Quark, it's an established rumor that those two are having problems. Which we probably already knew since TNG. Data, this is all your fault for getting those two together. Honestly, can we blame Odo for not being interested in finding a girlfriend if that's his example of what it's like? A man alone indeed. And while being leered at by Quark, Jadzia reconnects with Cisco like a couple of old buddies.
Steamed asna would put years on your life.
Fricasseed. Fine, but not steamed.
And this is a nice moment between Dax and Cisco. Understand that this is early in the show. Even though Cisco just met Jadzia a few episodes ago, she carries the Dax symbiont, which was in Cisco's mentor and friend, Curzon, until he died. It's kind of strange for Ben right now because he's still getting to know Jadzia, while still joking around like old buddies with Curzon. While there's aspects of this that really only fit into sci-fi, namely Jadzia is an alien with an alien symbiont, it's not unlike reconnecting with an old school friend after not seeing them for years. different, but still the same.
I've missed your steamed Ozzy.
You must miss Curzon too.
Jadzia tells Cisco that it might be uncomfortable for a while, but Ben's willing to resume his friendship, and good gravy, Keiko, are you still yelling at Miles? The whole bar can hear you two!
Chief O'Brien and the missus are having problems.
Odo starting a random fight too? Man, he's throwing down!
You have 26 hours to get off this station.
Oh, right. Bajor's on a 26-hour day. Keiko's not happy. Big surprise. She feels useless. On the Enterprise, she was the ship's botanist, but since Miles took the chief engineer's position on DS9, she gave up her job and they don't need a botanist on DS9. Which makes absolutely no sense. There's an entire Gamma Quadrant to explore with plenty of weird plants. Why wouldn't they need a botanist for research on the station? Heck, Miles even says as much, but Keiko's only response is that she's not on any of the starships going into the Gamma Quadrant. What, you have to be on a starship to study Gamma Quadrant plants? Why can't they drop off plants for you to look at on the station? Why is this a problem?
I'll see to it you get to go.
I don't need favors from you.
Jeez, chill out, lady! Your husband's trying to help! Miles even makes a perfectly good suggestion. Keiko could start an arboretum on the station to study new plants from the Gamma Quadrant and also decorate the promenade with plant life. And early DS9 is all about rebuilding Bajor and the station into a new home. It would be little touches like that that would make it all feel homey. But no, Keiko can't see any good in that idea either. Alright, now time for a palate cleanser. The start of a beautiful friendship.
My name's Jake.
My name is Nog.
His name is Ibudan.
Oh, the transition on that scene. So the man Odo roughed up at Quark's is Ibudan. He was a gouger, murderer, and overall jerk during the occupation. Odo put him in prison for killing a Cardassian, but when the Bajoran provisional government took over, they released him. And suffice to say, Odo doesn't want him on his promenade.
You can't just arbitrarily force him to leave. Watch me.
We do get the first glimpses of Odo's dedication to justice, not necessarily the law. Laws change depending on who's in charge. Before it was the Cardassians, and now it's the Federation and Bajorans. But justice never changes. We see similar recurring themes in Star Trek a lot. Mainly, do you follow orders that you think are wrong, or go with what you think is right? And Odo is basically that theme, but outside of Starfleet, with his own moral code. In fact, Odo being an outsider with his sense of justice is a big part of his character throughout the show.
As long as I'm in charge of
If
security.
you can't work within the rules, I'll find someone who can.
Meanwhile, a sexy massage holo program is running in the Holosuite. Ibudan is dead, meeting his end in the Holosuite. Only there's a lot of strange things about his death. For one thing, he appears to be the only person who entered the Holosuite, and the door only opened twice, once to let him in, and again for the killer to leave. There was no beam in, and the only DNA found at the scene of the crime was his. And there's no way another person could have gotten into the Holosuite. Unless, of course, they happen to be a shapeshifter. Yes, someone who could slip through the cracks of the Holosuite in his gelatinous state. Even more concerning is that another Bajoran, whose name is Zara, but it's only said once in the episode.
Do you know Mr. Zara, who operates the Transit Aid Center?
We met?
Claims that Ibudan was scared that Odo was going to kill him, and then he was dead an hour later. Which, considering Odo began raining blows upon him at Quark's, it holds some water.
The suite was secured, so no.
Odo, what the hell happened to your voice?
Lorien.
Now, I would speculate that this was early DS9, and Rene Auberjonois was trying to get a feel for Odo as a character. Which, considering this was the first episode filmed, even though it was the third that aired, would be a reasonable conclusion. Except Odo's voice goes back and forth in this episode between his regular gravelly voice and something closer to Rene Auberjonois' natural voice.
Later, the door was opened for the second time.
Double accommodations? Unless the murder was committed by someone who could get through the cracks in the door.
To be quite honest about it, I was in a pail.
Acknowledged.
No one can tell the diddly difference.
And even checking out Ibudan's quarters makes things even weirder. He was traveling alone, but wanted double accommodations, which is brushed off as, oh, he probably just wanted bigger quarters. And upon looking at Ibudan's schedule, which includes leaving Alderaan, confirms Star Trek and Star Wars are in the same universe. Odo is specifically named in Ibudan's appointments. And even more concerning is that Odo was in his bucket when the murder took place, so he has no alibi. This isn't good.
It's a pretty neat package.
Now, as I mentioned earlier, there are smaller subplots going on about the other characters, which not only breaks up the murder mystery so it doesn't get too serious, but they offer little slice-of-life moments on the station. They don't necessarily add anything to the main plot, but they help define the characters that carries over into the rest of the show. Jake and Nog get into teenage hijinks, a regular occurrence in the early show, but in this case, they use little bugs to make some unsuspecting adults change color. And of course, they get caught with a rather bored and eager to feel useful Keiko O'Brien watching.
Those kids had no reason to be hanging around the promenade.
Yep, she's that neighbor. Poor Miles, still eating Keiko's cooking. How many kelp buds must that man eat?
They ask you how you are, you just have to say that you're fine when you're not really fine, but you just can't get into it because they would never understand.
And refusing to mind her own business, Keiko brings it up to Cisco, so Jake gets into even more trouble. But it's clearly that Ferengi boy. He's up to no good, I tell ya! But Jake points out that Nog's the only one close to his age on the station.
That's not exactly true, Jake. There are 12 other children on board, ranging from 8 to 16.
Whoa, Keiko. That's a pretty big age difference with kids. How many high schoolers do you know want to hang around third graders? I know 8 years isn't a big deal with adults, but for kids, that's a pretty big gap. So Keiko floats the idea of opening a school, even though she has zero experience teaching kids. Except probably Molly, her daughter.
Everyone has a different culture, a different philosophy.
I know I'll have to come up with an innovative program.
Oh, that's going to age very interestingly later on. Aside from all of that, we also have Julian trying to score a date with Jadzia, but she seems to spend a good amount of time with Cisco, so he's jealous.
I guess I know the competition now.
What are you talking about, Julian?
Well, did you have a nice dinner with Commander Cisco?
Well, she did. He didn't want to order the steamed asna.
I don't want years on my life if I can only eat steamed asna.
Later on during the Ibudan investigation, Julian and Cisco have lunch and Ben confirms that he and Dax are just friends. Now, the early show does tease Julian and Jadzia being a potential couple, but that slowly got phased out for them being good friends, and eventually Jadzia and Worf got married. I have my thoughts on all of this. I prefer Julian and Jadzia as a couple over Jadzia and Worf, but that's probably the subject for another video. But right now, let's get back to the investigation. Odo can't think of anyone who has it in for him, but Zahra is stirring up resentment against him at Quark's. And weirdly enough, Quark is coming to Odo's defense. Odo may be a lot of things, but he's no killer.
You're his worst enemy.
Guess that's the closest thing he has in this world to a friend.
Those two really are the definition of frenemies. Meanwhile, a mysterious figure overhears everything, looking like he's about to tell everyone that the Death Star will be quite operational once their friends arrive. In Ops, Kira adamantly takes Odo's side. He wouldn't have done it. And she would know. After all, she's getting away with murder as they speak. But it's still a conflict of interest, so Odo's off the case.
I don't personally believe that you're responsible for this.
Now, how can that be true? You don't know me.
Actually, this is a really excellent point. While Odo knows he didn't do it, Cisco's probably only known him for a couple of weeks at this point. That's not nearly enough time to be sure of his innocence, especially with all the evidence against him. And he only has Kira's and Quark's good word. Either Cisco's placating him even with the best of intentions, or he's far too trusting. Odo leaves the office mad because he's off the case. Man, this really is like a police drama. You're too close to this case, Constable! Only to return to his completely trashed office. Oh, that says shifter. For a second, I thought it said So Quark comes in for the one thing Odo needs. Witty banter.
You've kept me on my toes for far too long now.
Turned you into a better crook.
Like it or not.
Quark's been asking around about Ibudan though, and even though he didn't have any enemies, he generally hung around dissidents the Cardassians had locked up. You know, as much as these two say they hate each other, they look out for each other throughout the show. Meanwhile, Julian's growing something in sickbay, and Keiko said they didn't need a botanist. Well, they still don't. This is from samples Julian took around Ibudan's quarters, which started to form DNA strands and is now growing into a blob or something. So he's going to keep growing it and see what happens. Meanwhile, an entire mob is chasing Odo into his office and... Morn, not you too! Don't worry, kids. Morn just thought there was a party somewhere. He's always down for a party.
Feel your anger.
What the hell do you people intend to accomplish here?
The crowd is out for blood. Odo's blood. Except he doesn't have any. They want justice, and Odo's definitely guilty because look at all the evidence. But Sisko steps in and gives a pretty darn good speech.
Is it justice you're after, or just some way to express your anger? Your fear?
For shame, Morn! And like straight out of a soap opera, Julian rushes into the scene and reveals Ibudan was not murdered. The victim was, in fact, his clone.
Clones. Clones? Clones.
That's what the strange samples from his quarters were, and Julian managed to grow another Ibudan in sickbay.
In about 2 days, he becomes a living, breathing member of Bajoran society.
Now, is this a cop-out solution? I would argue no, but it's one that only could work in sci-fi. It is properly set up. There was only one set of DNA at the scene of the crime. Everyone would have assumed that any of the Ibudan DNA from the scene of the crime came from his lifeless body, not from the killer. Now, how Ibudan managed to sneak his clone into the Holosuite without anyone noticing? Your guess is as good as mine. Odo heads back over to Ibudan's quarters to find the mysterious hooded man. His name, Lamone S. He's a French Bajoran. Only Lamone is actually Ibudan, revealed in perhaps the best scene in this episode.
Killing your own clone is still murder.
Wait a minute! Riker? You have any comments on that? Also, I'm glad Odo was right and wasn't trying to pull a poor innocent man's face off.
You're phony! Fakey phony fraud!
Odo is vindicated, Ibudan is arrested, and Odo receives no apology from the mob. Morn, I'm not mad, just disappointed. The episode ends with Keiko opening her school, which Miles is quite supportive of. Heck, he even gave her a school bell.
Hear ye, hear ye!
With only Jake expected to be in attendance, students start slowly rolling in. Sisko looks on and smiles as life on the station returns to normal. And that was A Man Alone. It highlights Odo's commitment to justice over laws. Heck, we even see Odo let go prisoners later on in the name of justice. The episode also touches on prejudice against Odo as a shapeshifter, though I wish it was handled better in the episode. Sure, he's different and it's easy to round up a crowd to go after him, but it seems to come out of nowhere halfway through the episode. That kind of anger and prejudice needed to be built up in the story. I also like how the slice of life moments are blended into the episode, and how they're going on in the background with the investigation. For a show like DS9, which focuses on relationships, it's pretty cool that it's all established early on. Sure, a lot of details in this episode don't carry over to the rest of the show. For example, Ibudan is never mentioned again. But this is a good Odo character building episode, and just for that, it's worth watching. I definitely recommend this episode to newcomers to DS9 for the well set up mystery and the character building moments. And not just for Odo, but for the other characters who help make DS9 come alive. So what do you think of A Man Alone? Did you love it? Did you hate it? How well does this episode work as a murder mystery? Did you expect the clone reveal during the first rewatch? Was it too much of a cop-out, or does it work in a sci-fi setting? And what are some of your favorite Star Trek mysteries? Please, leave comments below and discuss. As always, thanks for tuning in to another episode of Treknalysis. If you like what you see, why not give my video a like and subscribe to my channel? Tell your friends! Until next time...
Killing your own clone is still murder.